Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to East Central Missouri and the world, and welcome to the James Strong Show podcast number 326. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for making us a part of your day. I appreciate it. This podcast was recorded on the morning of Saturday, August the 19th, from the James Strong Studio in Western St. Charles County. Bit of a different topic today, kind of a back-in-time topic, kind of a historical reference topic, kind of a, well, just, I'm not going to say different because it seems like every one of my podcasts here lately has been a bit different. But it's about the whole cancel culture, okay? And how it doesn't seem to matter what you say because you're going to offend somebody. And if you offend somebody, then you're canceled. I mean, just that there's been a countless number of people out there who have become canceled. Now, there's a time and a place for canceling an individual. Jeffrey Epstein is probably somebody who should have been canceled, okay? Who's the ball player? His name escapes me. He plays for the Tampa Bay Devil Rays. Good ball player. Can't think of the guy's name. His name escapes me. Probably shouldn't have even brought it up. But good ball player, signed a big, long contract, and it looks like he's been having an affair with a 14-year-old girl. Okay, maybe you cancel that guy too. But there's been a countless number of characters, people playing characters, and people doing things who just get canceled. And I see stuff on the internet, on television, not so much radio because you don't see stuff on radio, okay? And you just scratch your head thinking, what are they even thinking? The topic of today's podcast, once upon a time, could have gotten me into trouble. And we'll talk about how it could have gotten me into trouble, what I've done in the past to keep myself out of trouble, and why it really doesn't matter like it used to that I'm getting into trouble, okay? And we're going to talk about the whole cancel culture and why people are canceling, and I say people, okay? That's painting with a broad brush. So maybe somebody will cancel me because I'm referring to everybody as being the same. But different things out there, people do things, and there's bad behavior, there's perceived bad behavior, and there's just behavior who a handful of people don't like. Those are three different things, okay? So we're going to talk about how personally I'm getting to the point where I'm wanting to personally to cancel all of society. I shouldn't say that. Cancel much of the dominant society that's out there. How's that? I'm getting ready to cancel them. So we're going to go into that as to what this whole cancel culture thing is all about, and a little history of the James Strong Show, where it was once upon a time, where it became, where it's going to go, etc. So how am I going to mix those two topics in? Well, in the next half hour, 45 minutes, keep listening, and you'll find out. First off, I wanted to mention the trip that I had, and we'll get into this whole cancel culture thing, but I'm back to traveling quite a bit, just as much as I was before the pandemic. Now that the pandemic is, I'm not going to say it's gone because it's not, but people are still getting COVID. In fact, there's been an upkick in Europe where I just came back from, where I got COVID recently. And also there's an upkick in COVID cases here locally in the U.S. That's the bad news. Good news is it's not as bad as it used to be. People have gotten vaccines. People have had it 1, 2, 3 times. The virus, as my doctor explained to me, as these pandemic viruses keep going, they don't get worse. They get better, and I mean not better, but the symptoms aren't as bad. Okay, so I'm traveling just as much as I always have, okay? Or as much as I used to during the pandemic, before the pandemic. How's that? But part of the travel has to do with where you go. And part of the world, as you know, part of the world that I really love is Death Valley. And if you've read the news, a lot of people just scratch their head and say, why is this big news? There's a big hurricane getting ready to hit Southern California. It's going to hit I think it's going to begin maybe Sunday afternoon, Sunday night, and go through Monday. That's a big deal for those folks because, and especially for folks in Death Valley. The reason I say that is Death Valley may get 5 inches of rain, 5 or 6 inches of rain in the next, between maybe Monday morning and Tuesday morning. Why is that a big deal if they get 5 or 6 inches of rain in Death Valley? Because that's 2 to 3 times the amount that they normally get. And we've built roads in Death Valley so we can get from point A to point B. Those roads go through washes. Those washes turn into lakes and rivers when they get this kind of rain. So my beloved Death Valley is probably about to be wiped out this weekend. And I don't know how long it's going to take before they can rebuild it, but there's a good chance that my annual trip in April will be scratched because of this hurricane that's going through Southern California. Now, why is this a big deal? They have hurricanes every once in a while there, right, Strong? No, actually, they don't. The last one they had, 1939. I discussed this with my 87-year-old father, and I explained to him, here's how big a deal this is, Dad. The last time they had a hurricane, you were 3, okay? So you talk about a once-in-a-lifetime event. This is a once-in-a-lifetime event. So this is a big deal. This is not blown out of proportion. These people in Southern California are going to get hammered, and there's going to be an unbelievable amount of damage, hopefully not where people live. I mean, if Death Valley gets damaged, that means that we're not going to be able to drive through there anytime in the near future. However, Los Angeles, San Diego, Bakersfield, those are cities that don't have the infrastructure that can take that kind of rain. So I guess by Tuesday, we'll know what's happened. But keep an eye on the news. This is going to be a big deal, folks. I mentioned that I've been traveling a lot. I traveled this week. Airports are interesting nowadays. This week I traveled Tuesday through Friday. Got to the St. Louis airport at 6:45. Now, one of the reasons I like to travel on Tuesday instead of Monday is because the airport is less crowded. And when I got there at 6:45 for my trip, the airport was dead. But from the time the shuttle dropped me off to the time that I went through security and got to my gate, actually went through security, checked my gate, got in line at Dunkin' Donuts, got my sandwich and coffee, and then sat down. Maybe 10 minutes had gone by. Yeah, the whole time. That was at 6:45. Now, by 7 o'clock, it was getting real busy. In other words, by the time I was sitting down, I'm noticing, hey, this place is getting busy. Well, after I drank my coffee, I had to use the toilet. After I got out of the toilet, by 7:30, the airport was jam-packed. It was amazing. Between 6:45, dead. At 7:30, jam-packed. So I guess my advice to you is if you're going to fly and they say things like, well, you need to get to the airport 2 hours early. Well, you know what? Maybe this time of year, with flights being full like they've been, that won't be, or that's not bad advice. In fact, that's probably pretty good advice. Did read an article this week about airplane travel. And for those of you who travel a lot on an airplane, it is a big deal. Many of you'll be yawning through this, but it's not going to be long. So just bear with me if you're not into airplane travel. But what's the first thing you do after you take off? You get to altitude. The pilot says, hey, we're at 10,000 feet now. You can pull out your laptop. You can do this. You can put down your tray table. You can lean back your seat. Well, quite often I lean back my seat. Sometimes people like it. Sometimes they don't. Personally, when the guy in front of me leans back his seat, I don't like it, but that's okay. I don't mind. A lot of other people, it's a big deal. In fact, I didn't think it was as big a deal until I read this article in the Wall Street Journal. And they talk about a case where this lady named Sharon Snyder paid for a ticket for an overnight flight to Germany. So she wanted to relax, so she leaned back her seat. The passenger behind her didn't think she should, so she started whacking the back of the seat. Now, Ms. Schneider used hand motions to tell the woman who didn't speak English that she, too, should recline her seat if she wanted to make more space. Schneider eventually had to call a flight attendant. She said at this point she was upset. That lady wasn't the lean-back police, and I wanted to lean back, so my 8-hour flight wasn't going to be miserable. Now, if you've ever flown transatlantic or worst case, trans-Pacific, and you get stuck next to a jerk or in front of or behind a jerk, it can make the flight a nightmare. 2 times on trans-Pacific flights, I've had that problem. One time was on a Cathay Pacific flight. It was on a 747, in fact, big airplane. I was near the front of the plane, the coach front part of the plane, and I had a bulkhead seat, which was great. I had all kinds of room. We're getting ready to take off. There was one guy to the right of me, but nobody to the left of me. The seat was open. And just before we took off, down the aisle starts walking this big Samoan guy who's probably, no exaggeration, about 350 pounds. And I'm thinking, this guy's not going to sit next to me, is he? He did. And for 13 hours, he sat next to me, and the guy couldn't fit into his seat. He took about half of my seat. So basically, I was skin on skin with this guy because I had a short sleeve shirt on, so did he, for 13 hours. And he flop sweated on me the whole trip. What did I do to calm my nerves and not say anything? Because the guy was being as compliant as he could. He leaned over the one side, but he was just too big. Luckily on Cathay Pacific, they serve lots of alcohol. And I just proceeded to just get so drunk that I didn't care. That's the only way I could get through it. Another time, it was on a flight with JAL to Tokyo Narita. And I leaned my seat back because, again, this is a 13-hour flight. Chicago to Tokyo Narita is a 13-hour flight. That's a long time to be in an airplane. You can watch 2 movies, read a book, and you still have 5 hours until you're going to get your destination. And you can only drink so much unless you're sitting next to a 350-pound Samoan guy. So I reclined my seat so I can take a nap. The lady behind me bangs on my seat. She didn't speak English. I just ignored her. She kept banging on my seat. She hit the flight attendant button. The flight attendant came. She complained to the flight attendant, in Japanese, I assume. And the flight attendant said, "Sir, you're going to have to lean your seat forward." I said, "Why?" She said, "Because the lady behind you wants you to." I said, "Well, it sucks to be her. I'm not going to lean my seat back." She said, "Sir, you have to lean your seat back. It's the policy of JAL that if the person behind you doesn't want you to lean your seat back, you can't." So I did, because my alternatives were to make a big scene, then get hauled off off the airplane by the Japanese police when we land, or to have a big knockdown drag out with the jerky lady behind me. So I leaned my seat forward. The guy behind me then reclines his seat. Okay, now I have 2 options. I can be a jerk like this lady was, or I can just suck it up. I didn't want to be a jerk. I sucked it up. And once again, I drank so much alcohol that I had passed out myself, and that's how I got through the situation. So my liver has been done irreparable damage because of 2 in-flight problems that I had with reclining seats and seats not being big enough. That being said, it's a big deal, okay? In my opinion, if you want to lean your seat back, you should be able to lean your seat back. You pay for that seat, you should do with it as you please. If the guy in front of you leans the seat back in front of you and takes up some of your space, well, sucks to be you. He paid for that space, didn't he? If the airlines do not want you to lean your seat back, then don't make the seats lean back. Case in point, if you sit in front of the exit row, okay, your seat's not going to lean back. Reason being is if that seat leans back and people need to get out of the airplane on an emergency, the seat impairs them, so you don't, okay? That's the only case where I don't think the seat should lean back. But everybody has their opinion on that. Everybody's is different, and I don't expect the airlines to enforce things too much, but I do know if you fly JAL, they're going to enforce that. If the guy behind you does not want you to lean your seat back, you can't. It's a big mess. Getting into people being jerks, Whereas, like I mentioned in the last story, the lady behind me on the JAL flight was a jerk. The guy next to me wasn't a jerk. He was just morbidly obese, so he took up more room than he should have. But that wasn't his fault, and he tried to be a gentleman, so you accept it. Did you watch the Cardinal game last night? I don't know what the final score was. It was 7-0 late in the game. The Cardinals they're just horrible this year. But I wanted to watch some of the game because they brought up the new shortstop, Mason Wynn. Now, it's hard to tell what this guy's going to do. He's had a great season in the minor leagues, in AAA. By all indications, he's going to be a very good shortstop. So I want to watch the guy, okay? First 2 at-bats, I think he made an out. Third time up, little ground ball to third baseman. Third baseman charged it, threw it, couldn't get the guy out. His first base hit, okay? So there's your first base hit as a major leaguer. Traditionally, the guy keeps that ball so that 25 years from now, maybe he's in the Hall of Fame. Maybe he never made it in the big leagues. But you know what? You can show your children, your grandchildren, your great-grandchildren, look, this was the ball that I had my first major league hit with, this ball here. Well, the first baseman for the New York Mets, of course, the third baseman threw the ball to the first baseman. He caught it, but Mason Wynn beat the ball out, beat the hit out. So he had a base hit, an infield hit. Pete Alonso then took that ball and threw it into the stands, knowing full well, in fact, he raised the ball up and was asking questions about the ball. I wasn't there, but I assume that question was, this is his first ball? This is his first hit? He throws the ball into the stands. Talk about being an a-hole. I've heard stories about this guy, about how he's just a jerk, he's a bad teammate, and I've just dismissed him because I don't know much about the New York Mets. I saw firsthand, but this guy was just a total jerk. Now, I told the trophy wife, I said, you watch this game. Next time this guy gets up, he's going to get drilled in the ribs for doing that. Didn't happen. Now, once upon a time where Miles Michaelis drilled the guy in the ribs for bonking his catcher in the back of the head with a bat, I thought that was justified. Pete Alonso should have been drilled in the ribs that time, the next time he came up. Now, here's the thing. Well, if you're a baseball purist, first of all, that's just part of the game. And also, it was nobody on, 2 outs. You don't drill the guy in the ribs and load the bases with nobody out. Well, here's the thing. Who cares that they were losing the game? Who cares who wins the game? The Cardinals and the Mets, neither one are going to the playoffs. See, they're both bad teams. In fact, the only difference between the two teams is the Cardinals spent a lot of money for a bad team, and the Mets have spent an astronomical amount of money for a bad team. Their payroll approaches $500 million, and they're bad, okay? So they're 2 bad teams playing, okay? So the outcome of the game really doesn't matter. James Nally was the Cardinal pitcher. He didn't drill him in the ribs, but he walked him, not on purpose. I'm thinking to myself, okay, you loaded the bases anyway with nobody out, and the inning blew up and the game got out of hand. But why don't you just drill the guy in the ribs? I don't understand that. Once upon a time, if Bob Gibson had been on the mound, back in my day, if Bob Gibson had been on the mound, he'd have been drilled in the ribs. You don't throw a rookie's first pitch into the stands. Pete Alonso, in my estimation, shouldn't be canceled, but the guy's just a first-class jerk. I would never want him on my team. But there's a lot of first-class jerks out there. And there's a lot of good people out there who are being chastised and ostracized because the perception is that they're a jerk, and that's not the case at all. And I'll bring up 2, an actor and an actress. Bradley Cooper, Sandra Bullock. Both are Academy Award-winning actresses, okay? So they're good actors. She's a good actress. He's a good actor. They do a great job. They both won Oscars, the highest honor that can be given to a member of Hollywood. Have you heard why Sandra Bullock is being criticized? You think, well, what has she done lately? In fact, she really hasn't made a movie lately, has she? Well, she made that movie some years ago called The Blind Side. You remember that movie? It was about a football player, Michael Orr, a big fella who was adopted by he's black, adopted by a middle class, or actually a rich white family, and They brought him in out of poverty. They brought him into their home. They treated him as an equal, as one of their children. And with the help of their tutelage, he played football at, I think, Ole Miss, and then he went on to play, I believe, for the Baltimore Ravens, maybe some other teams. Had a good NFL career, okay? The guy was a good ball player, made a lot of money. Well, now he's saying that the Toohey family who adopted him really didn't adopt him. They just put him under a conservatorship, and they stole all the money that he should have gotten from the deal, and blah, 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 blah. Okay, that's another story for another day. And in fact, that, you know, Michael Oher is saying, yep, they took all this money and they stole it. The Tooheys are saying, you know what, we never made a nickel off of this thing. So they're 180 degrees from one another. That solution can be solved easily. The Tooheys just open up their books because they're already multimillionaires, okay? Just open up your books and show where the money went. Either you did steal the kids' money or you didn't. But again, that's not where the controversy is. That's between their lawyers. And it may just be a money play. Who knows? Nobody knows. I don't know. Nobody knows. But the Tooheys know. The Michael Oher knows. But other than that, I think very few people know. So it's going to be a big, drawn-out court battle between the two parties, okay? And you think to yourself, well, how does this involve the actress Sandra Bullock? Well, she played Mrs. Toohey, the adoptive mother of Michael Oher in the movie. And she won an Academy Award for it. And there are actually for Best Actress. And there are actually people out there who are saying, why, the Tooheys they took advantage of this young man. So Sandra Bullock should give back her Oscar. What? She's an actress who played a part in a movie. And because there's now a controversy where something may have happened or may not have happened, she should give back her Oscar? That might be the most ridiculous thing that I've ever heard in my life. You're an actress in a movie. Why would you give, and obviously you portrayed the lady quite well because they gave you an Oscar for it. Why should you give it back? Because there's some controversy behind the real life story of this. Oh, and by the way, here's another news flash. They said, why, guess what? This isn't even how it really happened. The story's not exactly like it was in the movie. The movie exaggerated. The movie took liberties. Really? Every movie based on a true instance takes liberties. And why do they do that? Do they want to change the story? Do they want to offend people? No, they want to make it more entertaining for people to go ahead and watch. Okay? Case in point, Sandra Bullock is a beautiful woman. Mrs. Toohey, very average. They're not going to have a very average woman play Mrs. Toohey because nobody wants to watch a very average woman. They want to look at somebody like Sandra Bullock, okay? They took liberties with the story. All directors, producers take liberties with the story. All actors and actresses expand the role of the real-life individual that they play because, friends, they're actors and actresses. Their main job is, or at least should be, to entertain the public who paid a whole bunch of money to sit their butts in that seat. Not to make a politically correct statement, not to change the world. Doctors change the world. Social workers change the world. Parents change the world. Actors and actresses entertain us, okay? That's the main thing they do. And they're calling for Sandra Bullock. Some are calling for Sandra Bullock to give back her Oscar because of this controversy, because this rich white family may have done wrong financially to this poor black boy. Well, first of all, he's not a boy anymore. He's a man. Also, he played in the NFL, and he has made tens of millions of dollars himself. So he's no pauper, okay? Number 2, Bradley Cooper. Another Academy Award-winning Hollywood guy, okay? He's been in a lot of movies. What was the one he won the Academy Award for? Was it A Star is Born? I think so, with Lady Gaga. It was a good movie. The guy played a good part, good role. And he's actually turned from a character actor to a leading man to he's now a director or a producer who writes screenplays. The guy's very talented, okay? And they're making a biography. He's making a biography about Leonard Bernstein. Leonard Bernstein, the famed conductor, okay, wrote a lot of scores for motion pictures. The guy had a fantastic career. And, oh, by the way, Leonard Bernstein, shockingly, is Jewish. Bradley Cooper is not Jewish. So Bradley Cooper is being criticized for two reasons. First of all, how dare a non-Jew play a Jew? And number two, he put on a prosthetic nose to make his nose look bigger. Now, don't take my word for it. Google a picture of Leonard Bernstein, okay? He has a big nose. And what's an actor supposed to do? Portray an individual. So to portray Leonard Bernstein more accurately, Bradley Cooper had his nose extended using makeup. And he is being lambasted for this. How dare he? They're calling him, saying he, Jew face is what they're saying. Now, it's odd. To me, just the term Jew face seems kind of racially motivated to me. Well, but if it's a Jew saying Jew face, it's okay. I guess that's the same thing as if a black fellow wants to say the N-word, but I can't. Okay. I guess maybe it's kind of something like that. But Bradley Cooper is just being slammed for this, okay? And I don't get it. I don't understand it because, first of all, he's just making himself look more like the character. Second of all, a non-Jew playing a Jew, we can't have that? Really? Let's turn the tables. Now, this is what's going to get me into trouble, okay? And let me do a little backstory on this. When I first started in radio 12, 13, 14 years ago, whenever it was, I created a moniker, James Strong. James Strong is not my given name, okay? Many of you know that, some of you don't. I've used that name as a moniker mainly because I don't make much money at this deal. I never did make much money in radio. Few people make much money in radio. Me in particular has not made much money in radio at all. I have a day job. That's what makes the money, virtually all of it, okay? And I, once upon a time, believe it or not, more on the radio than on the podcasts, say things that are outlandish, outrageous, and can get you into trouble, okay? So that's why I picked a moniker. That's why I created James Strong, kind of like Batman and Bruce Wayne. Who else? Tony Stark and Iron Man. Hannah Montana and Molly Cyrus. Well, maybe scratch that last one. But you know what I'm saying, okay? So I picked this moniker so that if I did say something and I did upset people and they did lose their mind and I did get fired from a radio station, James Strong got fired, okay? And I could continue on with my day job because James Strong isn't employed by the day job. So you know why I did that, okay? This could probably get me canceled, except for it can't, because I don't work for a radio station. In fact, I don't work for anybody. I only work for myself. If this offends you, then don't listen anymore, okay? I don't think it's going to offend many people out there. I think I know my listening base pretty well. But here's the statement I'm going to make that I don't think anybody's going to disagree with. If you do, please send me an email and make your argument, jamesstrongshow@hotmail.com, and I'll even have you on the air to argue the point if you want to. But again, nobody's going to do that because I'm right. It's a case, the old James Strong pompous ass theory where, yeah, everybody's entitled to their own opinion, but in this case, your opinion happens to be wrong. Bradley Cooper is being criticized because he's a non-Jew playing a Jew. And he's being criticized by Jewish people everywhere. The exception being the family of Leonard Bernstein. So if anybody's going to criticize him, it should be them. They're saying back off, okay? But Sarah Silverman, a whole bunch of Hollywood people that are Jewish are slamming Bradley Cooper, a non-Jew playing a Jew. Let's turn this around. First of all, the Jewish population of this country is not very big. Proportionately, Jews in Hollywood are huge. A huge percentage of Jews work in Hollywood. Directors, producers, actors, and actresses. Is that a big deal? No. Is that even a deal? No. It's just a thing. It just happens to be what it is. There's a lot of Jews in Hollywood, a lot of Jews that are actors and directors and producers. So if Bradley Cooper, a non-Jew, cannot play a Jew, let's say we go with that, okay? Now let's turn it around. All you Jewish actors and actresses, you can only play Jews. If it's a non-Jew, you can't play it. Scratch all Westerns. Scratch all... In fact, you can basically scratch anything unless it's a movie about a banker, the Holocaust, or Hollywood. You see why I picked a moniker, James Strong? Okay? But that's the truth. That's the truth, okay? In my opinion, that's the truth. Hollywood is dominated by Jews. And that's not a bad thing. It's just a thing. And if you say a non-Jew can't play a Jew, then can you also say a Jew can only play a Jew? A Jew cannot play a non-Jew? Well, first of all, that'd be ridiculous. Because there's so many Jews in Hollywood that some of the finest actors, actresses, producers, directors are Jewish. And they should be able to play anybody that they want. Why do they pick them? Because they're good at their craft and they make money for the studio. That's what it's all about, okay? Every now and then you come along with some type of an art film that doesn't make any money, but those art films, they cost $700,000 to produce and they made $500,000. They lost $200,000. So what? Spike Lee's made a bunch of those movies that are all losers. But Hollywood banks on the movies that they cost $5 million to make and they made $50 million, or cost $50 million to make and they made $500 million. That's where they make their money, okay? And I suspect this movie will make money too. Mainly because most everything Bradley Cooper does is entertaining, is successful, is nominated for awards, and most importantly, makes money. So if Bradley Cooper, a non-Jew, wants to go ahead and make a movie about Leonard Bernstein, a Jew, why shouldn't he? And again, if you're going to cancel Bradley Cooper for playing a part of a Jew in a movie, then you got to flip it around and say, all you Jewish actors and actresses, you can only play Jews. Would that be fair? Of course not. It'd be ridiculous. Just as ridiculous as Bradley Cooper being canceled. I thought about doing this. I'm going to go ahead and do it. This is another thing that's going to get me canceled, okay? Or at least some would want to cancel me for this. And again, is the reason why I use the moniker James Strong. We're going to a cocktail party tonight, to an event, okay? And the invitation says cocktail attire. And I say, well, what is that? I asked the trophy wife, what does cocktail attire even mean? And she says, well, I'm wearing a dress. Oh, okay, well, I'm not going to wear a dress, so you haven't helped me. Thank you. So that's okay. So what do? What does everybody do? You take out your phone and you Google cocktail attire. What does it mean? Well, the first 7 ads were people wanting to sell me stuff, which may or may not have anything to do with cocktail attire. Found an article in GQ magazine. I read it. I still don't understand what cocktail attire is. So I Googled an article in another gentleman's something or another. I don't know what it was. And I read it and had a little bit of a better understanding as to what cocktail attire is. I think I know what it is now. I know what I'm going to wear for the occasion. It won't be jeans and a t-shirt. It'll be something nicer than that. But have you noticed that all of a sudden you don't see many white men in ads anymore? You see mixed race people, you see black people, you see women, and if it's a white man, he tends to be gay or serving somebody else. That's been my observation. Now, I know why they're doing this, because the tables have turned and industry is trying to cater to another group of people. And I get that. I'm not offended by it. I don't care. They think that this is going to work to sell more stuff. If it does, they'll continue it. If it doesn't, they'll stop it. Like the whole Bud Light thing with the trans advertisement person. But it'll change. It's not a big deal to me. But sometimes the ads are ridiculous. And here's the statement that's going to get me canceled. They had a picture of a guy in cocktail attire. And I was totally shocked because it was a white man. And he had Down syndrome. And I thought to myself, you know what? I understand the all-inclusive thing. But is a person with Down syndrome actually going to a cocktail party? And if he is, what are they trying to do? Are they trying to sell clothes to Down syndrome people that want to go to cocktail parties? I found it silly, ridiculous, and laughable. Why would they do that? I get the all-inclusive thing, okay? I get that. But to have somebody with Down syndrome modeling a ad for cocktail attire, I found it bizarre. I found it very bizarre. Again, James Strong Show at hotmail.com if you don't like what I said. Again, if you want to go ahead and refute what I said, I've done this before. I did this when I was on the radio. It's an open mic. I'll let you come on and make your argument. But be careful. Be careful what you wish for, because that means it's gloves off. Lastly, the last thing I wanted to mention about this whole culture, where we are, where we're going, and I've said this many times that things will change, but things will not change until they get so bad that there's no option except for them to change. There's a guy named John Chachis, and he's the owner of a luxury department store called Gump's in San Francisco. Has nothing to do with Forrest Gump, okay? That just happens to be the name of the store, Gump's. They've been in business for 166 years, okay? It's a high-end store. They sell luxury items. And they started in San Francisco. They only have one store. It's in San Francisco, so it's not a chain. It's just a store. It's been around since 1861. Was born out of the famed California gold rush. In other words, San Francisco was where all the miners brought their stuff into to cash out. And all of a sudden you got this normal guy who maybe never made more than $100 in his life has $10,000. So they started a store called Gump's that sold luxury stuff. So now all of a sudden this guy can splurge and buy all this stuff. So Gump's has been around since 1861, 166 years. This year may be their last year. Now, John Chachis, the owner, says, and I'm going to quote, "The ramifications of COVID policies advising people to abandon their offices in San Francisco are only beginning to be understood. Equally devastating have been a litany of destructive San Francisco strategies, including allowing the homeless to occupy our sidewalks, to openly distribute and use illegal drugs, to harass the public, and to define the city streets." Wow. Somebody in San Francisco actually criticizing the homeless drug culture that has destroyed that city. Now, it's only partially destroyed that city, okay? What has also destroyed that city is San Francisco made its the latest rendition of the success in San Francisco had to do with Silicon Valley, the tech industry. It's all right there. And when COVID hit and all this high tech, they decided, you know what, we can just work from home. You know what, we like this working from home. You know what, we have computers, we're high tech. We can be just as productive at home as coming to the office. There's different opinions on that, but the bottom line is if your employer thinks you're just as profitable working from home as at the office, if you want to do it and he lets you do it, then there's no arguing it. Well, that means you don't have to go to San Francisco and go to the office building. It means you can stay home. That means you don't have to commute. That means the man doesn't have to buy office space. So San Francisco is becoming a ghost town. Nobody's going there to work, which means nobody's going out to lunch, which means nobody's shopping. The only people around are the homeless and the drug fiends. So Gump's, who's been around for 166 years, may be closing. Now, is this a good thing? Is this a bad thing? No, it's just a thing. Because actually, there's only a handful of stores, businesses that were around 166 years ago that are still around. Things change. Things evolve. They go back and forth and back and forth. California is the biggest example of this. I mean, California is probably the bluest state around, or at least one of the bluest states around. They elect left-leaning Democrats at an astronomical rate. California, the state of Richard Nixon, the state of Ronald Reagan, two of the more conservative presidents we've had in my lifetime. So California has turned. And will it turn back? Eventually, yeah. Maybe not in my lifetime, but eventually it'll go the other way. If you remember in the 1960s, even into the 1970s, there were no Republicans in the South. They were all Democrats. And the reason was because in the 1860s, a Republican, Abraham Lincoln, ran the North in the Civil War, and they held that animosity for 100 years. Now, a Democrat can't be elected dog catcher in the South in most places, except maybe in the big cities. Missouri was the same way. Missouri is just overwhelmed by Republicans, so much so that the Republicans are so out of touch, they don't know what they're doing. They're ruining the state, in my opinion, because there's no Democrats to offset the Republican silliness, okay? But once upon a time, you had Tom Eagleton, you had Stuart Symington, you had Dick Gebhardt, you had Ed Dirk, you had Robert Young, you had Buzz Westfall, all these Democrats who ran the state of Missouri, okay? Republicans couldn't get elected dog catcher. Now it's the other way around. The tide turns, things change. Will things continue to change? I don't know. Bradley Cooper and Sandra Bullock, will they be continue to be ostracized, or will the public finally come to their senses and say, hey, look, it's just a stupid movie? Will clothing companies continue to put people with Down syndrome on their ads for cocktail attire? Will Gumps ever close? Well, if it does, something else will take its place. The only thing for sure is change. And that's the only thing you can bank on. Things are going to change. And it's part of the James Strong philosophy. If you're happy with the way, if you don't like the way things are, be patient, because they'll change. If you do like the way things are, ride the wave, friends, because they will change. Well, that's it. We're done. JamesStrongShow@hotmail.com. That's the email address, JamesStrongShow@hotmail.com. Send me an email with your questions and comments, or if you want to be a part of the show, or if you want to get the show, I should say. Send me your email via that link. I will send you a link to the podcast upon publication, and we will you can download it and you can listen to it at your leisure. That's it. We're done. Until next time, this is James Strong saying adios.